Good morning everyone, today we're going to be talking about how to play the Hunter class, specifically the sword. If you want to learn about the wire lance, or if you want to learn about the partisan or the spear, this is not that video. This video is solely on the sword only, and is mainly going to be talking about Hunter main class, not subclass, okay? But first of all, if you're new to the channel, I upload NGS content daily, so if you do play this game, I would really appreciate a subscribe as it really helps out the channel. Anyway, without further ado, let's begin the video. Alright, the very first thing I want to talk about is the skill tree. Do not copy my skill tree right now. My skill tree right now is very messy and is not ideal. However, what I'm going to go over is each individual skill, explain what they do, and then explain what my ideal setup would be if I could redo my skill tree. So first things first is Warcry. Warcry is actually really useful because it brings the aggro to you. And if the monster is targeting you specifically, it's a lot easier to anticipate enemies' attacks so that you can counter them in order to deal additional damage. Because hunters have two abilities which allow them to deal a crap ton of damage. The first one is Sword Guard Counter with Sword Guard Counter Plus. So what Sword Guard Counter does is the moment you're about to get hit, you click your weapon action, which will block with your sword, and you immediately do a counter attack which deals additional damage. However, if you have Sword Guard Counter Plus, then you can use your regular auto attack and you will immediately deal the 5th attack in your rotation, which deals massive amounts of damage. This attack right here, I have hit up to 2.5k, 3k damage on a single auto attack. It is huge damage. It is very powerful. So this is your first sort of counter. You've got a second ability which is called Hunter Art's Perfect Parry. So what Perfect Parry does is the moment you cast a PA, if you time it at the same time that you get hit, you take 0 damage and you deal additional damage because of Hunter Art's Avenger. Hunter's Art Avenger is when you're charging a PA or when you're casting a PA, if you get hit in that duration, you deal additional damage. And this is extremely powerful. With 1 point in Hunter Art's Avenger, you can deal a crap ton of additional damage. I've dealt up to 2.8k damage with just a little spinny attack. Don't worry, we will go over all the skills in a second, alright? So first of all, I just want to explain the skill tree. So to recap all the different counters, Sword Guard Counter, Sword Guard Counter Plus, very strong. Then we've got Hunter Art's Avenger, as well as Hunter Art's Perfect Parry, also must take. These are very strong, highly recommend. Now, Hunter Art's Avenger PP gain, this is up to personal preference. This is basically whenever you proc Hunter Art's Avenger, you gain 10 PP back, which I find very useful, but if you don't parry this way very often, then maybe you can skip out on it. Now we're going to come back to the top row over here. Hunter's Physique is a must get. If you want to save points because let's say that you use the Wired Lance and the Partisan and the Sword, then you could just put 1 point in Hunter's Physique. It's still really good. Flash Guard is nice, however, I would probably only put 1 point in it because it does give you 10% damage reduction at level 1, which is very nice. Iron Will is basically a cheat death ability. The moment you die or get to like 1 HP, Iron will kick in and you'll be invulnerable for 10 seconds. So it lasts for 10 seconds where you're just invincible. However, in order for it to proc again, you're going to need to wait 3 minutes. So there is a 3-minute internal cooldown for this ability. However, it is very strong and it's automatic. So basically, you're just fighting. If something's supposed to kill you, but you have Iron Will, you don't actually die. And you have invincibility for 10 seconds so that you can drink potions or do whatever you need to do in order to heal up. Very nice. Next one is Omnidirectional Guard. Extremely powerful, extremely useful. However, it is limited to hunter weapons only. I highly recommend people to invest a point in this because basically it gives you 360 degrees of block. So even if an enemy hits you from behind, as long as you hit your weapon action in time, you can counter it, which is very strong and pairs very nicely with Sword Guard Counter as well as Sword Guard Counter Plus. Slow Landing Charge Hunter basically allows you to stay in the air a lot longer when you're charging up your PAs because you slowly float down and you won't drop like a rock. It is extremely nice because the main problem that a hunter has is getting elevation, especially when you're fighting like those flying stingrays and stuff. It's super annoying to try to stay up there when they're shooting stuff and everything, all this crap is going on. It's very annoying. Next up is Same Art Skip Attack Hunter and Another Art's Skip Attack Hunter. These two abilities, I recommend picking one. picking one of these that you prefer. So the difference between the two is with same art skip attack counter is when you cast the same PA twice and then go into your auto attack rotation, you will automatically attack your third attack, then fourth, and then fifth. So basically you're skipping auto attacks 1 and 2. Now if you use another art skip attack hunter, it's when you use 2 different PAs, then your next attack is going to be the 4th attack and then the 5th attack for auto attacks, okay? It sounds a little bit complicated, but basically the TLDR between these two is, do you spam the same photon art over and over and over, or do you spam different photon arts over and over and over? That is the TLDR. For me, I spam the same one over and over, so I should take the same art skip attack hunter. I do not spam different photon arts, so I should not take another art skip attack hunter. Alright, so just look at your own playstyle. Do you cast the same PA over and over, or do you cast different PAs? And that will determine whether you take a point in this one or a point in that one. Now the Wildland stuff we're going to skip. We're not even going to talk about them because this video is about the sword and the sword only. Sword attack extra. This allows you to string up to 5 normal attacks. This skill is extremely important. The reason I say that is because your 5th attack deals like a bajillion damage versus your first 4 attacks. Your first 4 attacks are going to hit like 100, 100, 100, 100. And then your 5th attack is like 1,000, 1,400, 1,500. It deals a lot more damage than your other 4 attacks. So please, please, please take sword attack extra. And on top of that, if you have sword attack extra and you have sword guard counter plus, the moment you block an attack and counter it, you're immediately going to go into your last attack, which is the 5th attack, which deals the 1,500, 1,600 damage, and it's going to be very, very good, and you're going to destroy everything just by countering them. It's super, super nice, okay? And just by investing all your points into that, you are good to go. So what would I change in my skill point allocation over here? I would take less flash guard. There is no need for me to put 5 points in flash guard. I was being a dum-dum. I would put 3 points in flash guard, 1 point in Warcry, 1 point in Iron Will. So I would do that and take away 2 points here. And that's exactly what I would do. I wouldn't change anything else here because I do not use the Partisan and I do not use the Wired Lances, okay? And that would be my skill point allocation. If you are unsure about how you could put your skill points, just put 1 point in everything and that unlocks all the different abilities and that's how you get the most value. However, just keep in mind if you put 1 point in everything, you're not min-maxing, you're just covering all your bases basically. Alright, next up let's talk about the abilities. So I'm just going to use my auto attacks first. So this is auto attack 1, 2, 3, 4. That's what you normally have, and then it would just loop 1, 2, 3, 4 over and over and over. However, your big hitting attack is the 5th attack, which is this 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. You see when you did that forward flip and downward swipe, that is the attack that's going to deal a ton of damage. This attack right here. That one is your big hitting attack. You want to get to the 5th attack as often as possible, as quickly as possible in order to maximize your damage. Now, obviously those are just auto attacks. Then we have our photon arts. So the photon arts that I personally use, I only use 2 photon arts. The 2 photon arts that I use is Caliber Streak as well as Twisting Zapper. Twisting Zapper I use because it's very useful for mobility. You know, you can move forward very easily. You can tap it to move forward. You can charge it to move forward. It's really up to you however you want to do it. But I use it for mobility in order to move towards an enemy, to move away from an enemy, to move anywhere. Basically a movement ability, alright? Then for Caliber Streak, you can see that I've put this on my sub palette, mainly because I don't like holding shift to change my weapon palette. My pinky gets tired, I'm super lazy, so I put it on my number 4 key so I can reach it with my index finger very easily. So the way that this ability works is you hold it down. You have to hold it down for like a good 3 seconds, and then you see this big slash over there, and this big slash will hit the enemy multiple times. So that is my big attack whenever the enemy is down. So the moment the enemy is down or stunned or immobile, I go into Caliber Strike and I just go pa 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 and slap them silly. and that is what I use. So I literally only use 3 attacks in order to deal damage. The first one is Caliber Strike. You know, I just hold this down and boom, 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 boom. Now you can tap it, but it's not going to deal as much damage. It's going to hit the enemy once and it's going to do very little damage. The big deal about this ability is you have to hold it down to deal the big PP damage. My second damaging attack is this one, this spinny. You know, I can either tap it or I can charge it. I like to charge it because it deals more damage, okay? And then my last source of damage is, of course, my auto attacks on the 5th one. Bam, that's my big PP damage. However, in order to get to the 5th attack much faster, I use the weapon action. You can see that I'm blocking right now and I take reduced damage when I'm blocking. However, if I time the block just as I'm about to get hit, I will do a counter. I'll do a counter attack which will hit the enemy for a little bit of damage, but because I've invested 1 point in the counter attack plus, it will actually allow me to jump straight to my 5th attack immediately. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to show you against this enhanced enemy, and I'm just going to show you what the counter looks like and show you the attack, because it's really powerful and really cool. So here is the enhanced enemy. So I'm just going to let it attack me. Counter. You see I move forward with that slash right there? That is because I countered. And then I can follow up with that. You see the somersault? Bing and boom. You see? And the thing is, when you're in the somersault, you are actually immune. It's an entire iframe. It's super long iframe. You see, that attack didn't even touch me because I was still in the iframe. It's very useful. Bing and boom. You see? And you just can practice on this guy until you get comfortable with it, because it does take a little bit of practice, but once you get comfortable, you're constantly going to be dealing your 5th attack, which deals a ton of damage. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to destroy the little microchip on his back so that I can deal regular damage. And bam, you see 2,000 damage just from that one counter. So it's really important to learn your weapon parries as well as your counters. So we just showed you the weapon action counter. Next up is the Sword Art Avengers. So as he's about to hit me, I'm just going to right click. Bing, you see, I took no damage, but I dealt tons of damage to him with my spinny attack because I simply tap my right click. However, if you want to deal additional damage and you know the enemy has a very long wind up, you can charge your PA and wait for it. So you see how I'm charging? I'm just waiting for him to attack me. Once he's about to attack, boom. You see? Big PP damage right there. And that's how you do the big damages. You charge up, wait, boom, big damage. See? Now obviously you might be like, Kero, that's not a lot of damage. You're doing like 70 damage to a level 5 unit. You suck. And that's because he's enhanced, alright? The moment you destroy his enhanced thing, you're gonna do big damage, alright? Boom. You see? And that explains pretty much all the different counters you have. You've got your tap into this to counter, you've got the charge up one, and then you've got your weapon action one, which boom, and then followed up with the 5th attack. Okay? So now I'm just gonna do a normal run like how I would normally fight an enhanced unit. The reason why I like the twirly attack is because I can get behind the enemy very easily. You can see here, I go boom, 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 boom. I go around them. You see, I'm easily hitting the microchip thing. Now we can counter, and bam. See, it broke it immediately. Let's counter that again. Come on, try to hit me. Counter, and bam, KO. You see, I was facing backwards just to show the counter over there, but I wasn't even sure if I countered properly. But I countered, and then I hit. So next up, let's talk about weapons. You really only have 3 choices of weapons. You have the Catalea sword, you have the Straga sword, and you have the Resurger sword. I personally do not recommend the Resurger sword. The reason is because the Resurger sword, in order to proc its potential, requires you to dodge an attack. And all of your abilities are all about countering and blocking attacks, which kind of, you know, invalidates the whole Resurger thing. The only reason why I might use a Resurger weapon is because I can't live without my Wired Lances. Because Wired Lance, the weapon action for that is basically the Attack on Titan thing. You shoot 2 hooks at the enemy and you pull yourself towards it, and it's a super useful gap closer. The only issue with that is you're going to have to basically play totally different from what I've been showing you, and you won't be able to capitalize on all these different abilities which allow you to do huge PP damage. Alright? Second choice is the Straga sword, the one that I'm using right now. So the Straga sword's potential is it gives you a ton of potency. but at the cost of taking more damage. So again, I would not really recommend the Straga sword unless you're always at low HP or you're always at half HP for whatever reason. Then sure, the Straga sword is great because the potential is unconditional. It's always going to give you this potency, you're always going to take this 10% more damage, and this is just how it is. Now, if you do upgrade this to level 4, you will take less damage. It goes down from 10% to 8%, and your potency will be a little bit higher. However, for the majority of the hunter mains out there, I recommend you guys to just use the Catalea sword, because the Catalea sword, even though there is a condition for your potential, it's very easy to meet the condition. It is as long as you have 80% or more HP, you deal additional damage. You get that 5% extra potency, and the difference between the Catalea sword and the Straga sword is literally 1% potency. So sure, you're going to be dealing a little bit less damage, like very minimal, but you don't have to suffer the 8% or the 10% extra damage, which is kind of a big deal, because as a hunter, it's kind of your job to be in the front of things, to protect your team, to take all the aggro, and to be like the tank of the team, basically. Especially if you have a point in Warcry and you kind of want the aggro anyway, because if you have the boss focusing on you, it's a lot easier to anticipate attacks as long as you know what rotations or what attacks the boss actually can do. Next up are the augments. Basically, as a hunter, you want to focus on melee weapon potency. I do not recommend Might 1. The reason I put Might 1 is because I had nothing to put into this slot yet. I don't have 10 capsules of the more desirable augments, so I'm just putting this as a placeholder. However, Form Soul 2, extremely good. You deal 2% more damage and you take 2% less damage. Very powerful augment, highly recommend, and it's easy to farm as well. Second one, Magnus Note. Melee weapon potency plus 1.5%. Also very easy to farm, you just go to Mount Magnus, and very powerful augment. Third augment is Alt Secreta 2. You have a little bit less HP and you have a little bit less damage reduction, but you gain 1.5% more potency as well as potency floor increase, which is really good. So these three I highly recommend, and then just take anything else that increases melee weapon potency as well as maybe give you HP or something that gives you more damage resistance or gives whatever fits your playstyle. Next up is the armors. You have a lot of choices for armors. You can go with the Giant armor, the Vialto armor, the Catalea armor. I do not recommend the Keldi armor. This is because the armor defense is too low and it just gives PP, which you don't really need. Now, obviously, if you have the box armors, so the ones that you break the 3 boxes in the open world, they're like different colored ones, you can use those as well. They're also really good. It really depends on your personal preference. I personally like the Vialto armors because it gives a good amount of defense and it gives me this 1% damage resistance by default. This is really nice for my personal playstyle because sometimes I get very careless, I mistime my counters, and then I take a hit. And if I die because I take one hit, well, then I'm not going to be very helpful to my team. So I personally build as tanky as possible with my armors, and I go full glass cannon with my weapon. Now, obviously, if you had a Catalea sword, then you don't have to go full glass cannon. You can still deal a ton of damage and be super tanky without any compromise, which is why I still think the Catalea sword is probably the best bet because it's easier to farm, it's a lot cheaper on the marketplace, and you can probably get one with a fixa on it, which will give you even more value over the Straga sword. Alright, that's just my personal opinion, but that's what I think. Now, I know some of you guys are asking, Carol, why don't you use the spinny uppercut attack? I personally just don't like that attack. It's a good PA, don't get me wrong. If you like to use that PA instead of the spinny one, or if you're just an epic gamer that uses all of your PAs, then by all means use it. I personally just don't put it in my rotation because I'm monkey brain. I just like to spin to win as well as use my Excalibur attack and swishy swashy and things die, right? So that's just me. Special thanks to all the members for supporting the channel. It really means a lot to me. Thank you again. But anyway, that's pretty much all I wanted to cover in today's video. Hopefully you guys found it helpful. If you did, I would appreciate a like and a subscribe, and I'll see you guys in tomorrow's video. Bye!
What can I say except you're welcome for the heals, the boosts, the